Today's podcast is about energy healing. It is one of those topics that instantly divides opinions. Some people see practices like Reiki as a natural way to support balance and well-being. Others dismiss it as unscientific or purely imaginary. And then there's a third group, the quietly curious. People who are not fully convinced but are open enough to explore the experience. And after many years working as a Reiki practitioner and teacher, I have encountered all three perspectives. I've worked with skeptical clients, curious observers, and people who deeply believe in energetic healing. I've also been yelled at during a fair by people convinced I was doing the work of the devil. And this article isn't about trying to prove who is right. Instead, it's a reflection on the controversy around energetic healing, like Reiki, the experiences I've witnessed, and why healing doesn't require us to understand every detail of how it works. So enjoy the podcast and let me know what you think.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we're looking at a really fascinating friction point. One that touches on the very nature of how we process our own human experience.
Yeah, it's a big one today.
It really is. We are asking, how do you explain something that people feel deeply, that they experience on this profoundly physical and emotional level, but that science cannot always perfectly quantify or measure?
It's such a profound question, and it sits right at this intersection of spirituality, physiology, and really our basic human drive to just categorize the world around us.
Right. We need to put things in boxes.
Exactly. And I want to set the tone early here. We are looking at this not to somehow prove or disprove a specific modality. That's not what we're doing. We're here to explore the intersection of human curiosity and our actual biological responses.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive gives us a really unique lens into that exact intersection. It comes directly from the personal reflections and the private notes of an experienced Reiki master and teacher.
Which is such a rich text to work from.
It is. So our mission today is to explore the quiet controversy surrounding energy healing. We are going to examine the mechanics of belief versus doubt. And we'll look at why we might not actually need to understand the granular mechanics of everything just to extract a tangible benefit from it.
Which is a crucial distinction to make right out of the gate. We are reviewing these notes to explore energy healing as a lived phenomenon. We're looking at human behavior. We're looking at how the body responds to focused rest, and really at how we, as an inherently skeptical society, process things that sit just outside our current scientific frameworks.
Absolutely. So let's jump straight into the material. The practitioner notes right away that there is one ultimate question they feel way more than any other.
Oh, I bet I know what it is.
You probably do. It's the question that inevitably surfaces at dinner parties or, from a new client walking into their studio for the very first time. They always ask, so how does Reiki actually work?
Right. And you can entirely understand the instinct behind that question. We operate in a society that leans so heavily on mechanistic explanations. We want the blueprint for everything. We want to know exactly which gear turns which cog to produce the desired output.
We really do.
Yeah.
And the author notes that people ask this exact question from very different starting points. Like, some people lean forward with sincere curiosity, hoping for a detailed breakdown of universal forces.
Yeah.
While others ask it with a raised eyebrow, essentially challenging the practitioner to justify their existence. So, okay, let's unpack this, because the author identifies three very distinct camps of people who walk through their door.
Three camps. Let's hear them.
First, you have the believers. These are the individuals who intuitively feel that energy healing is just an obvious, natural part of life. They don't require any convincing whatsoever.
They are already completely comfortable operating within that spiritual or energetic framework. I mean, they aren't looking for data. They're looking for the experience.
Exactly. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the skeptics. These are the people who want evidence. They want laboratory conditions. They want double-blind studies, repeatable data. If it cannot be measured by a machine, they approach it with a massive degree of doubt.
Understandably so, given our culture.
Right. And then there's the third group, the curious observers. This is the open-minded middle ground. They aren't ready to blindly believe, but they are also not rushing to dismiss it out of hand either. Their attitude is essentially, maybe there is something to this, let's just find out.
What's fascinating here is that the practitioner actually explicitly prefers working with that third group.
Really?
Yes. You might assume someone in this field would only want to surround themselves with absolute believers, to constantly validate their work. But that isn't the case at all. The notes emphasize a very specific theme here. Healing does not always require your intellectual agreement. It does not demand your belief. It simply requires a state of openness.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If the mechanism is purely energetic, shouldn't it work regardless of whether you are open or not? Like, why does the attitude of the client matter if the practitioner is the one supposedly doing all the work?
It is a great question. And it points directly to the collaborative nature of any physical or psychological intervention. Think about conventional physical therapy for a moment.
Okay.
If you go in with your muscles entirely tensed up, fighting the therapist's movements because you fundamentally don't trust them, the therapy simply won't be effective.
That makes sense, yeah.
The practitioner actually notes that highly spiritual people sometimes feel very little during a session because they are almost trying too hard to manufacture a profound experience.
They're forcing it.
Exactly. Meanwhile, highly skeptical people who just decide to relax and see what happens, they often walk away genuinely surprised by how physically balanced they feel. It removes the pressure of having to perform your belief.
Which brings us to the actual physical environment of a session. Because modern life, for you listening right now, for me, for anyone, it keeps us in a state of chronic, quiet stress. Our phones are always buzzing.
Always.
The ambient noise of the city is constant. The deadlines are always looming. We're basically marinating in our own stress hormones all day long.
The modern baseline is perpetually hovering near survival mode. Our sympathetic nervous system is often locked into this low-grade fight-or-flight response. And what the author synthesizes beautifully here isn't a mystical claim at all. It's a physiological reality.
Right.
Think about it. When someone lies down in a quiet room for an hour, what happens on a biological level? Breathing slows down, it deepens, muscles physically release held tension, the stress hormones, your cortisol and adrenaline levels naturally begin to decrease.
But is it just a guided nap then? Because if someone just goes to sleep for an hour, they are also going to get a reduction in cortisol. A skeptic would argue that the practitioner's energy work is completely incidental to the fact that the person just finally stopped looking at their phone.
And the skeptic makes a very fair point there. But it also creates an interesting friction. See, the practitioner isn't denying the physiological reality of the parasympathetic nervous system taking over. They are actively facilitating it.
Oh, I see.
Whether you attribute the result to a measurable concept like psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of how our psychological state affects our nervous and immune systems, or whether you call it universal life energy, the body's restorative processes are being actively engaged.
So the mechanism essentially becomes secondary to the result.
Exactly. The body is remarkably capable of repairing itself when it is not actively defending itself against modern stressors. If a skeptic lies down for an hour of focused stillness and feels objectively better afterward, the intellectual debate over the exact mechanism almost misses the point entirely. The physical benefit is undeniable.
To illustrate that specific disconnect, the disconnect between knowing how something works and still extracting the benefit from it, the practitioner uses a really grounded example in their notes. They call it the car analogy.
I love this part.
It's so good. They point out that you can drive a car, you can navigate rush hour traffic, and you can get from point A to point B perfectly fine without having the absolute slightest clue how a combustion engine actually works.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a pervasive psychological blind spot for us. We are entirely comfortable accepting a black box when it comes to technology.
Oh, totally.
Most of us cannot even begin to explain the microprocessing architecture of the smartphones in our pockets, yet we use them constantly. We trust the result. But when it comes to biology or human well-being, we suddenly demand a level of granular mechanistic proof before we allow ourselves to accept a positive outcome.
That is a brilliant distinction. We accept technological black boxes without blinking, but we completely reject biological ones. And the practitioner points out that a major part of this friction comes down to basic semantics. It is a massive linguistic clash centered entirely around the word energy.
Yes.
Because when a physicist uses the word energy, they are talking about something highly, highly precise.
Right. In physics, energy is the quantitative property that is transferred to a body or to a physical system. It is strictly measurable.
Exactly. But when spiritual practitioners use the word energy, they are not attempting to speak the language of physics. They are attempting to describe a felt somatic experience. They are talking about warmth in their hands, a tingling sensation, an intuitive sense of flow or blockages in the body.
Two different languages entirely.
Yes. So the skeptic hears the word energy and immediately thinks the practitioner is making an unproven, pseudoscientific claim. Meanwhile, the practitioner is just reaching for the closest English word available to describe their physical sensation.
It is a misunderstanding born almost entirely of vocabulary. And reading through these notes, the practitioner is actually quite humble about this gap in translation. They aren't claiming to have mapped the subatomic particles of Reiki. They are simply observing that when they facilitate this environment, people report feeling calmer, lighter, and in less pain.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because it is one thing to talk about stressed out people finally relaxing in a quiet room. We can all agree that feels nice. But it is a completely different conversation when conventional medical options have entirely run out.
Right.
The source text shares a deeply compelling anecdote about a specific client that really pushes the boundaries of that guided nap theory we were just talking about.
You're talking about the case involving the severe skin sensitivity.
Yes. So this client suffered from an acute sensitivity on her face and to a slightly lesser extent across her whole body. It was so severe that she literally could not bear physical contact. Even the lightest touch from a soft piece of fabric, let alone a human hand, caused her immense radiating discomfort.
Just an awful way to live.
Truly. And the striking context here is the client's husband. He wasn't a fellow spiritual seeker. He was a medically trained general practitioner, a very practical, science-minded doctor who had spent his entire career operating within the framework of modern medicine.
And as the notes detail very clearly, he had exhausted his own paradigm. He had explored every pharmacological and dermatological option he had access to, and they had just hit a brick wall. He had completely run out of medical solutions for his own wife.
So, out of pure desperation, and frankly, a lack of any other options, the wife decided to try a Reiki session. But she arrived at the studio and established a hard boundary immediately. Touching her face or body was completely impossible.
Right, because of the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, normally a practitioner uses gentle, hands-on positions to facilitate the session. But because she could not be touched, the practitioner had to adapt. They conducted the entire hour-long session hands-off, working strictly in the ambient space above her body.
In what they would term the subtle energy field, without making a single point of physical contact the entire time.
But wait, how do we intellectually bridge the gap here? You have a practitioner waving their hands in the air above a person, and the very next day, the client calls the practitioner in tears because the physical sensitivity in her face had dramatically decreased.
It's remarkable.
The improvement was staggering. She was overwhelmed by the relief. So, how does an analytical mind process an hour of non-contact presence, resulting in a tangible, massive reduction of physical pain?
That is the core mystery, isn't it? As an analyst, you have to look at all the potential variables. Was it a profound placebo effect where the mere ritual of seeking healing triggered a massive endogenous pain relief response?
Maybe.
Or did an hour of safe, expectation-free presence somehow interrupt the physiological cascade of her chronic hypervigilance, allowing her nervous system to finally perform a massive reset? Or is there indeed some subtle energetic interaction occurring that our current instruments simply cannot detect yet?
I found the practitioner's own conclusion to be the absolute most compelling part of that entire story.
Yes. What I found so refreshing here is that the practitioner doesn't let their ego take over. They don't try to retrofit a grand scientific theory onto the event to sound smart. They just write, I don't know exactly why it worked, but something helped her, and that matters.
And that matters. That is the crux of this entire deep dive. The relief the woman experienced was real, regardless of whether it fits neatly into a medical textbook explanation. But of course, stepping outside of those conventional textbooks doesn't always go smoothly.
No, it certainly does not.
Not every encounter with the unknown results in a peaceful hour of quiet reflection.
Human belief systems are incredibly rigid structures. When they are challenged, they can generate intense, immediate conflict.
Which takes us out of the quiet studio and into a public space for the second major anecdote in the notes. Now, before we get into this, I want to be crystal clear with you listening. We are entirely impartial here.
Yes, absolutely.
We are reporting this event straight from the source notes to look at human behavior. We are absolutely not taking a side. We aren't endorsing the practitioner's reaction, and we are certainly not judging the religious group's beliefs in this story. We are strictly observing.
It is a perfect micro-study in cognitive dissonance, just looking at the mechanics of the interaction.
Exactly. So the practitioner was working at a holistic fair. It was a bustling, friendly environment with lots of small stands where people could walk up, ask questions, and try short introductory sessions. Out of nowhere, a small group of highly passionate religious individuals arrived at the venue.
And they did not approach with curiosity.
No, they did not. They loudly confronted the practitioner right in the middle of the crowded fair, shouting that the practitioner was doing the work of the devil.
This raises an important question about how our brains process unfamiliar paradigms. When human beings are faced with a concept that doesn't fit neatly into their pre-existing framework, the brain often perceives it as a literal threat.
A survival threat.
Yes. For some people, encountering the unknown triggers an instinct to investigate. For others, it triggers an immediate defensive fear. They rely on the framework they already possess to explain away the unfamiliar, and sometimes that results in very dramatic, aggressive outward behavior to neutralize the perceived threat.
And the practitioner, who had been doing this long enough not to be intimidated, mainly just noted the bizarre irony of the whole situation. They even admit in their notes to rolling their eyes a bit at the spectacle. Because from the practitioner's perspective, they were simply offering people a chair, a moment of quiet relaxation, and a safe space to just breathe.
Right.
Yet, when viewed through the strict lens of this group's belief system, that exact same benign action was being interpreted as dangerous supernatural warfare.
It illustrates how powerfully our preconceived notions dictate our reality. Two groups of people can look at the exact same physical event, a person sitting quietly in a chair while another person stands near them, and they can perceive two completely divergent universes based entirely on the mental baggage they brought into the room with them.
The contradiction is wild. So what does this all mean? We have skeptics experiencing undeniable physical relief. We have desperate medical cases finding mysterious comfort when science runs out. And we have people screaming at holistic fairs. How does the author reconcile all of these wildly different reactions to their work?
They reconcile it through a very grounded framework they call the toolbox perspective.
Yes, and I think this is easily the most practical takeaway from the entire text. The practitioner explicitly states that Reiki is not magic. It is not some omnipotent force that competes with modern science. And it absolutely does not replace the need for doctors, surgeons, or pharmacological treatments.
Is not a cure-all.
Not at all. It is simply one tool in a very large, diverse toolbox of human well-being.
Think about the physical toolbox in your garage right now. You wouldn't pull out a hammer for every single job around the house.
No, that would be a disaster.
Right. If you need to tighten a delicate screw, the hammer is completely useless. It might even do damage, but you wouldn't throw the hammer away just because it cannot fix your plumbing. You keep it because when you need to drive a nail, it is the exact tool designed for that specific job.
For some people, energy work is the hammer. It fits their specific needs beautifully and helps them immensely, whether that is finding emotional grounding or reducing physical tension. For others, it does absolutely nothing. And the practitioner is entirely at peace with that.
Because it points to a much more mature, realistic view of wellness. It's the concept of collaborative healing. We don't have to choose a side in some imaginary war between science and spirituality.
We really don't.
You can visit an oncologist for your medical needs. You can see a cognitive behavioral therapist for structured psychological support, and you can use meditation or energy work to regulate your nervous system. They are not enemies. They are different instruments in an orchestra, working toward the same ultimate goal of keeping you functional and well.
Which perfectly brings us to the end of today's journey through these notes. We have gone from the strict, demanding need for empirical scientific proof all the way to the quiet, undeniable power of simply allowing the body to rest, reset, and receive care. The practitioner's notes remind us that the beauty of our lived experience sometimes truly lies in not having to possess all the answers.
Absolutely.
If someone walks out of a room feeling a little lighter, a little more capable of handling their day than when they walked in, maybe the demand for a mechanistic explanation is just our ego getting in the way of a really good thing.
And bringing this directly back to you, the listener, in your own daily life, we operate in a highly polarized environment where you are constantly pressured to either fully evangelize for a concept or completely dismantle and reject it. But there is a quiet, highly productive middle ground of curiosity.
I love that phrase, a middle ground of curiosity.
We encourage you to explore that space, whether that means trying a holistic practice with an open, unattached mind, or simply giving yourself permission to take 1 hour of expectation-free rest this week without needing to justify the productivity of it.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as you go back to your routine. We spent time unpacking the story of a woman whose severe physical pain was radically relieved without her even being physically touched.
Right.
If our complex biological systems and our exhausted minds can react so profoundly to just the intention of care and a dedicated hour of stillness, what other latent natural healing capacities might we be completely ignoring in our hyperconnected, always-on modern lives?
It is a question worth carrying with you.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We appreciate your time, your curiosity, and your willingness to explore the edges of the unknown with us. Until next time.
Thank you so much for listening. These podcasts are my way of bringing my written words into a space where you can listen, reflect, and connect while going about your day. Each episode is based on something I've personally written, exploring the thoughts, experiences, and topics I share in my blog. AI technology helps give these words a voice, but the stories, the insights, and the messages all come from me. Think of this as an audio companion to my writing, something you can enjoy during a walk, a commute, or even a quiet moment at home. The voice may be digital, but the heart and the meaning behind it are human. They are mine. Thank you for being here.